And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, a humongous Kickstarter campaign, a game that made over £5 million. This is a game from Awakened Realms. They do grandiose, huge games. This is a storytelling cooperative adventure game based in a very dark version of Camelot, basically, or King Arthur in his Knights times. Maybe, sort of, kind of. You'll find out as you go through. I mean, the game is called Tainted Grail. I see this statue here holding what might be the Holy Grail. In this game, you're going to play one of 4 characters, and just for purpose of this review, I am talking about the base game for this. None of the extra Kickstarter stuff, just the base game. And you're going to take one of 4 heroes of sort. There's actually better heroes who went off, and you got to figure it. They never came back. So you got to figure out where they are. You're the second string or the last string. You're going to go out and try to find them. And over the course of 15 different missions or 15 different chapters in this story, you're going to complete a fairly grandiose campaign. I'm not going to be able to show you everything here because I want to spoil you as little as possible. Some things here might be the most minor of spoilers, but you know, it is what it is. You can skip to the end if you don't want to see those. But here's a little bit about how the game plays. Each player is going to pick one of the 4 different characters that comes with this game. Each of these characters, you'll flip over the other side of their board at the beginning, and it will show you basically how good they are at different stats. So like, for example, he has 1 aggression, 1 courage, 1 practicality, 1 empathy, and 1 caution, but no spirituality. Also, this player is going to start with 2 food, 1 wealth, and 1 magic. That's pretty much all you need to do about setting up. You'll start with your highest hit points where you use this counter. Now what's neat about this counter is as this counter moves down, it stops the max that your terror can go and the max that your energy can go. And players, it shows you here, this guy starts with 6 energy and he starts with 0 terror. If your terror ever reaches up here, you're starting to go insane. If your hit points ever get down to the bottom, you are dying. And if your energy gets down here, you are exhausted. So players are going to be, they also have their own special ability. They have 1 good one. This guy can spend 2 energy to get a food when he's in a settlement. And they also start with a negative 1. So activated menhir costs this character 1 more magic to do. Players are going to be traveling around this crudely drawn map, but this is kind of just a map for reference purposes. You're actually going to be using cards, and this is where you'll start your journey. And there's these giant statues that are in this game, menhirs they're called, and one of these is going to start here at the beginning of the game, and you can discover and activate more of them as time goes by. These are going to have a counter placed in them, and it's kind of to be set at a certain number, and each turn they'll tick down till eventually they disappear. When they disappear, the lands that are near them are also not going to be able to be accessed. In fact, you can only access a land that's connected directly to it or diagonally to one of these menhirs. But if I discover another one here, then it opens up a new area and you can move around and find more of them and activate them, which is one of the main goals of the game. And you'll notice if you look carefully at these spots here, connects and makes a map, and as you go more, there is a ton of cards to make. I mean, if you put them all together, it makes a giant map. And players are going to be taking turns over the course of the game. There's an order of the day. At the beginning of the day, you'll get rid of any menhirs that have expired. You'll reduce their dials, and then you'll reveal an event card. There is a whole pile of event cards that this game is going to be going through. And sometimes these event cards are specific to the chapter. So there's a big deck of event cards, like for example, if you're in chapter 3A and you might turn over part 2, you'll turn over this event card and it will give you information. Sometimes there's random events, which could be anything from dense mists, full moon, to good weather. So sometimes a very specific thing will happen, sometimes some sort of random event will happen. And if there are bad guys on the boards, they're called guardians, they'll move around, but then everyone is going to be taking turns. And you're taking turns by spending the energy that you have until you decide to stop. And then at the end of the day, you can eat some food to get some health and get your sanity back down, and then you increase your energy for the next day. And things will happen between nights too. You might have a dream depending on where you are. Locations can give you dreams. But what are you doing with all this energy? Well, one thing you can do is you'll be able to move around the board. Sometimes you'll be able to do something based on a location. You can see, for example, here I can spend 1 energy to do chores for the townsfolk, which will give me 1 reputation. I can do that once per day. So if I want to increase my reputation, I can do that. I can go over here and spend 4 energy for a combat trial. This will make me lose a hit point, but I'll gain an experience. And there's all kinds of various things, and I don't want to spoil them for you. You'll find them out as you go along. You can also explore a spot. When that happens, you spend 1 energy, you'll turn it over, and you will read kind of a description here. But this card is really just the beginning. This here is the Exploration Journal. This is a really huge book full of all sorts of things that will match them. So, for example, that's 101, the farmhold, and you'll see it here, and it will tell you this is what's on the back of the card. And then it will have different numbers that you can go to. So here I'm showing you the tutorial at the back of the book. And so, for example, 107 will say this. Then you go to verse 7, do this. It will give you some choices, and you'll pick them. Sometimes you'll roll a die, and you can see there is a ton of text and things in here based on the locations. In fact, it's possible for a location to turn into another location. Players will have a sheet here called statuses, and as the game goes by, it might say, for example, take Dreams and Prophecies Part 1, take Diplomat Mission Part 1. Well, what does all this mean? Sometimes when you come across something, it will say, if you have peace in the borough, then go to this thing. If you're the people's champion, do this. And so these kind of is a way that the game will remember the different things that you've done. Unfortunately, you're going to run into encounters over the course of the game. There are 2 types of encounters. There are combat encounters and diplomacy encounters. And at the beginning of the game, each character is going to start with a deck of 15 cards tailored to that character. But that is not all you have. You, over the course of the game, will be able to spend your experience to buy more cards that will correspond to either your color or even specifically to your character, and add these to your deck. Your deck has to have at least 15 cards. You could just add a card to your deck, or you could mince cards out of your deck to make your deck work better. When you are in a combat, and combat changes slightly, and I'm not going to get too complicated as to how combat works, but let's say I'm fighting this royal elk here, which, by the way, is one of the very easiest things in the game. I need to get 6 cubes that I'm going to place here to take out the royal elk. And to do that, I'm going to be playing cards. So in each round of combat, I'll start the round by having 3 cards. And when I'm going to pick one of these cards to play. So let's say, for example, I decide that I'm going to play Risky Attack. So I place this one here, and I look and see what it connects to. It's always going to connect at the bottom. So this says 2 times. So I'm going to do 2 red cubes of damage. This will do 1 red cube of damage if I have at least 1 stat in that skill. So if I have 1 practicality, then I'll do another point of damage. And this one lets me draw another card from my deck. You can then play a bonus card, but you can only play a bonus card if you can match a symbol that shows the bonus. In this case, I can do it. Like I can play this one here. This shows the bonus. It attaches to the 1 here at the bottom. That lets me play a second card. It doesn't do anything else, but it does let me do another kind of attack, and maybe I can then pay another bonus here. But this bonus only works if I play a magic. This middle column is magic. Now this seems a little complicated, but it's not as complex as you might think. Essentially, you're playing these cards in a chain. You have to play, or you're supposed to play one. If you don't play one, then the monster will do whatever it says here. In this case, the royal elk will run away. I don't want it to run away. I want to get the, if I kill it, I get 2 food. So you want to play at least 1 card. You then can play extras if they show this bonus. You're just going to be matching, making sure you have the stats to do it, and doing damage to the creature. When you stop, the creature will do something to you based on how many it has. So it has 3 cubes here. It will do 2 damage to me, and then it will lose a cube. So that's not too good. I wanted to, I want to get more. Maybe then the next turn, I'll do 2 more damage to it. So then again, it will do two damage to me and then lose a cube. Then I do 2 more to it, and then it's going to run away. So 5 damage is not the best thing to do here. I want to do 6 damage to take it out. Now, the top card that you play will also do something. So, for example, if I play this defend card, this says on the enemy turn, I will prevent 2 of its damage. Well, that's not bad. I'll also put a time marker on it, and at the beginning of my next turn, I'll take this time marker off, and it will let me draw a card. You're going to draw 1 combat card every turn anyway, and every time you're in combat, you reshuffle your whole deck. So, but the more cards I have, the better off I am. So deciding what card to play on top, like this one here, gives a red cube to the monster for every point of damage that it does to me. There's all sorts of things that you can do, and the cards get better and cooler, but you're trying to figure out the exact combo so that you can play these cards and hurt this thing. And the card on top will do something different. This one lets you toss one of these dials, and if you get a skull, then the monster's going to do more damage to me. But if I get the other side of the dial, then I do 2 more damage to the monster. That's kind of a quick rundown. Diplomacy is very similar. You'll run across various things that you have to deal with. So, for example, I might run across a plague. This is a diplomatic thing. You can't fight a plague. And you'll put that down and you'll be using your diplomacy cards in the same way. But here you're trying to move this token to the top once, maybe multiple times, and it's going to be moving down to the bottom, and something good or bad will happen depending on which way it moves up. That's pretty much all I can show you without spoiling too much more of the game. There's a whole deck of item cards that you'll be able to buy and help you out and craft them. A giant sledgehammer, steadfast, pretty trinkets, moldy tomb. You also have a whole deck here of secret cards that sometimes the game will tell you to take, but I can't show you them because, well, they're secret. And if you upgrade, you're going to use your experience. You can upgrade and take more cards in your deck, but you can also upgrade your skills. When you upgrade to the 3rd skill, you'll also get a card that will do something. So, for example, in combat, whenever you connect a double aggression key, that's what they're called when you connect the 2 things, I do an extra cube. So there's all kinds of cool things, and these are all unique, so I can have a specific card that nobody else has. And you're just going to go forward. Now, you're going to be playing through this campaign. The campaign is really clear as to when you finish it. At different various points throughout the campaign, it might tell you to go to a number. This doesn't actually show a number, it shows this skull. So you'll put this skull on those 3 spots, find a number, and then instead of looking at a specific location in the book, you'll turn back to where there's all these numbers and read that number. And at some point it will say, hey, you've completed the campaign. And if everybody dies, you fail the campaign, although it does have kind of a save point status where you can go back and kind of come back to life and go through again. And after 15 chapters, you will win the campaign, possibly. There's offshoots and things like that. And that's how you play. The boards themselves all have these nice inserts here. You use these red cubes for everything. So, and they even have purple cubes that you can use to count as more. But I mean, using them for stats, using them for food and wealth, because of the insert of the board, it just works really well. And this is just, it's a stupid little plastic thing, but this health is a really clever device as it moves down, keeping you from moving up on this board. And really, the whole game is really clear. I have yet to find a problem in the book. I have yet to find, bad grammar, honestly. It's well written. The artwork on the cards is gorgeous. I mean, I really don't want to spoil the story for you too much because, these cards here, but as you look at these cards and you see just the background and they all fit together and they just look fantastic. And different things are going to happen. And again, a card might be replaced by another card. So like here, first farmhold, it might be burned, and you'll replace it with a card that says burn farmhold or whatever. And that's just a neat thing. Sometimes when you go in a card, something will happen to you, and it will tell you that right here. And then when the cards connect to each other, so you can see 106 goes to 112. So when I find 112, I'll see that points down at 106. If there are no two arrows pointing between cards, you can't move them. That's all the terrain there is. So I'm just very impressed with the components of this game. There is a ton. I'm not as impressed with the insert. It's a pain to put all the cards inside it, so I'll be getting rid of it. But I will say each character, there's a miniature for each character, a miniature for some sort of monster that may or may not show up at some point and be a pain in the neck, and I hate it. And then these things are humongous. They're the menhirs. They're really neat. They're cool. You put them on top of a card, and then in the bottom are the little dials. These dials are, well, they're actually my least favorite thing about the game. They look cool, but they obviously need to have a wash on them because I can never read the numbers on the bottom of them. You're supposed to put it here in the base, and then you just rotate it, but it's really hard to read the number, and that's probably my biggest annoyance with the game. There's I got these metal coins, which I think are a Kickstarter upgrade or something like that, but they're not much easier to read. There's also some dice that are involved in the game. One of them is used for monsters when they move around the board, and the other is just a number cube, six-sided die, essentially. The combat cards, there's huge tons of these cards included with the game. Sometimes they go for a specific character, like this one here works with Maggot, but you also can tell there's a background color to them. They're not as easy to differentiate from each other as I had hoped. They have these little flags if they're in the starting deck, but for the most part they make sense, and there's not too many different symbols on them, so you know, if Affinity's not green, move up one. There's also some really nice reference cards with the game, which you'll definitely be looking at. An icon glossary that shows you what different things are. And enemies will have special things, but they're all listed right here on how they work. And then there's an order of the day. These are the different actions that you can take over the course of a day. And then there's a card that shows you how to do combat and how to do diplomacy. There's a lot going on, but the game has a very nice rule book and tutorial. There is so much to discuss about this game, so let me try to get it all in here. So first of all, I haven't finished the whole campaign yet. I've gone through about 10 hours worth. It is my estimation that this campaign would be between 30 to 40 hours long, maybe. So there's an interesting thing in the way this game works. There's a tutorial. Well, I didn't even include that, but there's a tutorial that walks you through some of the cards, and it does a really good job of showing you the game. It tells you exactly what to do. It gives you these cards in an exact order, tells you what cards to draw, how to play them, and walks you through a little bit of a combat and diplomacy and things like that without spoiling the campaign at all. You don't have to play through the tutorial, but it certainly helped me understand how to play the game. There's a lot going on, though. Let's not kid ourselves. This game has a big amount of stuff going on, and the rules and how it works is going to get bogged down in a couple things. First of all, the changes to whatever the rules are based on what level of the campaign you're in. But the combat / diplomacy, that when that happens, the whole game kind of pauses and you go through that. I would argue that that's the most complex part of the game. But we'll come back to that. Other than that, it is kind of following a story. It has a choose your own adventure feel to it. And so I don't, if I was playing with you and you had never played the game before, I would be able to easily teach you and get you up and running really, really quickly. It's just that when it would get to combat, things might stop for a while, because while combat, the basic premise of it is pretty simple. To do well at the combat, to survive it, I guess not to do well, but just to survive combat is going to take a lot of thought on how to play your cards. So this game, let's talk about, there's some really good things and there's a few bad things about the game, but I will say overall I really like it. I didn't like it as much at the beginning. I thought it was okay, and as it went by, it really began to grow on me. The main positive point is the story itself. This game has a tremendously, excellently written story. It's darker than maybe I would be a fan of, but these giant menhir statues, the fact that they're going dark, the fact that the land is starting to fall apart around them, and this weirdness that goes on, and you kind of learn the story as it goes by. It's really intriguing to me. There's a part party that went out ahead of you, I mentioned at the beginning, and where did they go? Why did they never come back? You find that out as you go through, and it's just excellently written. It's really intriguing. There's a few genuinely surprises, and like I said, it's a darker version of King Arthur and his Knights. You may run across a name or two in your travels that you recognize from that, and I really enjoyed that. Now, the disadvantage to that is it is one huge story. You cannot just play a session of this and go away. I guess you could play the first chapter and then go and say, all right, we did it. But you're not really getting into it. So if you're playing this, you're playing the campaign. You're playing through the whole thing. And that's where I'm at. I'm going to go through this and play through the whole thing. Secondly, as with many of these games, you can play with 4 players, and it's good. You can get back and forth. I don't think it's bad, but I can see that I'm going to prefer to play this one solo. I have not actually played with more than 2 players. I played a little bit more than half my time with 2 players, and then the rest I played solo. And I'm okay with that. I like going through the book. I like discovering new things. I like that. And so the story and the theming and the art and the map as you put the cards together, and once in a while I'll run across something and go, oh, that's really cool. I love that part. It is the main hook. It is the best part of the game. Now, because it's a campaign game, they kind of, in my opinion, they have kind of a lackluster thing. If you die, that's it. Campaign's over. No! No. If I play 20 hours and my characters die, the campaign ain't over. And they know that, right? So there's a section you can go to and you come back with some, you start in a certain location depending what chapter you died in, and you get some things. And they act like, well, you can do that if you want to. Are you kidding me? I'm not playing 20 hours and going, well, we died, that's it. No, I'm going to go back and restart. In fact, I got to the point where I'm taking a picture of everything as it's set up. And then if I die, guess what? We're going back and starting it over again. Now, here's the thing. If you go back, you will know. Don't talk to that character. That character's going to slap you upside the head. Don't go down here. That's going to lead you down a path. And I do have some small negative things about the story. There were a couple dead ends in the story that I thought were occasionally, don't get me wrong, there's a whole story here. You go down here, oh, this guy slaps you, this person attacks you, this happens to you. I get it. But there was a couple times where I was like, oh, I'm going to go do this. And they were like, no, not only are you not going to do that, you're stuck there for a while. Oh, okay. Oh, I finally got out. All right, next time I go, I'm going to do the other way around. Nope, you're still stuck there for a while. And I was like, really? And there's a couple things in the game that revolve around dice rolling. And sometimes you roll low, and it's a really, really negative thing happens to you. And if you roll high, something positive will happen to you. And I found that the rolling of those dice, or even the items, there felt to me to be some capricious randomness. Like at the beginning, I'm going to craft an item. This item's amazing. This item ain't so good. The items are definitely not all on par with each other. And so I thought with some crazy moments of randomness in the game. To enough point that if I am massacred by something really bad, I have no problem saying rewind time, we'll go back and start it over again, because the story is what's important. And again, the book says here's ways to make the game easier if you're focused on the story, and that's where I'm at. The game is hard. Don't get me wrong, it is very difficult. The combat's extremely difficult, and once you're analytical with the combat, and so the person I played it with is my good friend Jason, and he and I were getting really good. Okay, you play this card, and then I'll play this card, and then I'll do this, this, and this, and you sit there and we think for a while, okay, if I play this card, and I want to do 4 damage to the character, not 5, and then if I do that and I put this card on top, this can happen, and it's actually really fascinating combat. In fact, you have 2 decks, a combat deck and a diplomacy deck, and honestly, so far in me playing, the combat deck's used about 5 times the amount the diplomacy deck has been used. And I really like, as I get experience points, I'm like, oh good, give me some more cards. I'm gonna make this combat deck even better, and every once in a while I'll upgrade my diplomacy deck. But I want that combat deck to be neat and cool, and I get these cards and try to think of good combos to play them in. That is a solid part of the game. You're going to be in combat, and it's neat. And then there's these monsters called Sentinels that might run around the map. There's another whole box of miniatures. I got that you can replace these monsters. We thought they were cool, and we never used them much because we just moved the card around. It was kind of too much of a pain to go in the box, find the right miniature, and you definitely do not need these miniatures unless for some reason you love miniatures. The game comes with miniatures that are with the game, and I think they're fine enough. There's just an overwhelming amount of content in here. You're going to be stuck in this land in Avalon for a really long time. You're going to, if you're in this for the long haul, and I really think you should be, there's a lot of neat stuff in here. The stories, the choices, and again, if you go through and play it again, you'll know, don't go there, don't do this, definitely do this. But you're also stuck with choices. Do I want to hunt and get some more food? You know, you need to get food. I want to get wealth in case I come across a merchant so I can buy some weapons from him. I definitely want reputation because people in towns will treat you different based on reputation. I definitely want experience because I can use that to better myself and make myself more powerful. That's a neat concept. Now, you might get more powerful, but don't worry. The game will level up right beside you. My personal preference with these games is to put them on the easiest mode possible. I feel no shame in that at all because I want to see the cool story. And when I did that, this worked out pretty well. I think the rule book was a little lax in explaining exactly how to flow from one chapter to the next. As far as I can tell, there is no flow. You finish one, you finish your quest, go right into the next, with no changes in between. And I kind of wish there was a little bit more of a hard point. The game does give you the idea of how to save it from game to game, but I would have preferred a little bit more of a clear, okay, I'm done with chapter 1. Let's pause, let's regroup, everyone rest. You know, instead it's like, no, you did this, what are you going to do next? If you like dark fantasy, if you like the struggling against the odds, I think you're going to enjoy this game. A short description of this game from me to people would be it's half Seventh Continent, half Gloomhaven. The combat, while very different than Gloomhaven, gives me that same puzzly cool feel. The discovering is like Seventh Continent, and it's really neat. And that's the part that attracts me more. It's a cool combo. It's definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea. If you are more about game mechanisms and stuff, you might like the combat and things, but the story part, you might be like, come on, move along. But if you like the story, I think you're going to enjoy this game quite a bit. I'm looking forward to seeing what's in here. I mean, in the Kickstarter, I think there was like 2 more full campaigns and minor campaigns. That's craziness. I mean, I want to see it all eventually, but this box itself is going to last me for quite a bit of time. So, really enjoyable game. That's Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time. Dice Tower Judgment, excellent!
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando, in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.